Okay, let's dig into this. Picture the Danube River, right? This ancient, winding waterway cutting through Europe.
Seen so much history, holds so many secrets.
Exactly, and sometimes it gives one back.
And what it gave back near the Erdap Gorge, the Iron Gates, people call it that, was, well, frankly, one of the most amazing finds in Europe. Really surprising.
Absolutely. So today we're doing a deep dive into this lost civilization, Lepenski Vir. And this whole dive is based on the specific sources you've given us. Our job is to explore this incredibly complex ancient culture.
And how it was found, against the odds.
Right, the rediscovery, and then this dramatic preservation story, too.
It's quite a tale. Deep time, human cleverness, and this desperate race against modern progress all tied together.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's 1965. We're right there on the Danube, Erdap Gorge. What's happening? What's the context?
Well, this was a time of huge projects, big ambition. Yugoslavia and Romania were partners in building this massive hydroelectric dam, the Erdap Dam, or Iron Gate.
A huge engineering project symbolizing power, modernity.
Exactly, for both countries.
But a dam that big on a river like the Danube, that has consequences, surely.
Oh, absolutely. The plan meant creating this enormous reservoir. The river level was going to rise a lot, maybe up to 30 meters in places.
30 meters, so huge areas of the riverbanks were going to be flooded.
Potentially submerging who knows what. Historical sites, archaeological evidence, maybe things nobody even knew were there.
And that's where Professor Dragoslav Sriovic comes in.
Him and his team, yeah. They suddenly found themselves in this race against time. History potentially about to vanish underwater.
The pressure must have been just enormous, knowing the ground beneath your feet could be gone in a few years.
It turned their work into this incredibly urgent salvage operation.
Wow.
High stakes.
So they start digging, painstaking work, you imagine, literally under the shadow of this giant dam construction already going on. What was that like?
Slow going at first, careful, meticulous, sifting dirt, trowel by trowel, looking for any tiny sign, any clue.
And then, the moment. The sources say Sriovic himself found something that felt different.
Yes, a piece of carbonized wood.
Yeah.
But incredibly well preserved, not just, charcoal. Sriovic, he had this gut feeling, years of experience.
Like an instinct.
Totally. The sources say his hands trembled. He just knew that spot was special, profound.
And just based on that feeling, he tells the whole team, focus here.
It was a gamble, yeah, a hunch, but a really educated one, and it paid off. Almost immediately. The very next day they found it, a piece of deer antler.
Okay, deer antler, like leftover dinner scraps?
No, not at all. This was worked, clearly shaped, carved, skillfully.
Ah, so actual proof, not just presence, but artistry, making things.
Precisely. That piece of antler, that was the confirmation. They weren't just finding traces of people passing through. This was a culture, people creating, building, thousands of years ago.
Okay, so that must have just electrified the team, going from maybe finding a few scraps to realizing this is something else entirely.
You can imagine this shift. Suddenly, all that hard work, it's fueled by this intense excitement. And as they kept digging, peeling back the layers, it wasn't just artifacts.
What was it?
An entire settlement, coherent, planned almost. A whole lost city, hidden there for maybe 10,000 years.
10,000 years. That's just staggering. We're talking way before the Egyptian pyramids, millennia before Rome.
It just completely changes the timeline for complex settlement in Europe, doesn't it? This wasn't some temporary camp. It was a place people lived, thrived for centuries.
And Sriovic gave it the name Lepenski Vir.
Yeah, after the local whirlpools in the Danube. Kind of fitting, tying it to the river that sustained them.
Lepenski Vir. So as the city starts to emerge, what did they actually find? What did life look like by the Danube 10,000 years ago?
Well, the first thing that jumped out was the architecture. Really unique, these trapezoidal homes.
Trapezoidal, like a triangle with the top cut off.
Kind of, yeah. That shape for the foundation, often built with local sandstone.
Even the shape sounds planned. Sophisticated for that era, not just round huts.
Exactly. And the floors, too, made of this hard, reddish plaster. Like a concrete almost. Limestone, sand, water mixed together. Sometimes polished smooth.
Wow, not basic shelters then. These were properly constructed dwellings with real thought put into them.
That planning itself started to challenge the old ideas about Mesolithic people.
And I read that at the heart of every single one of these unique homes.
There was a sacred fireplace, always rectangular, built carefully with stone slabs.
So not just for heat or cooking?
Doesn't seem like it. Its position, its consistent construction. It suggests it was the absolute focus, the spiritual center of the home, maybe? A shared cultural thing centered on the hearth?
They also found burials, right, skeletons, sometimes actually inside the houses.
Yes, that's mentioned quite specifically in the sources. Finding people buried right within or beside the home, that implies a really close tie to ancestors, keeping them literally part of the household.
That tells you a lot about their social world, their beliefs.
And gives archaeologists invaluable info about their lives, their health too. But maybe the most famous finds, the ones that really capture the imagination, are the sculptures.
Ah, yes, the fish people.
Captivating is the word. They're carved from these big river boulders, found right there, and they show these humanoid figures, but, well, they have undeniably fish-like features.
Like what features?
Wide staring eyes, downturned mouths, almost like a carp or catfish, sometimes patterns that really look like scales.
Wow, humanoid figures with fish faces carved from river stones. That feels like such a powerful message across time.
It really does. And critically, there's nothing else quite like them from this period, the Mesolithic, anywhere else in Europe. They strongly suggest this deep, maybe spiritual connection to the Danube.
The river wasn't just food and water then.
It seems it was much more. Sacred, maybe. Home to gods. Or perhaps these figures are ancestors linked mythically to the river that gave them everything.
Okay, so we've got this incredibly unique place. Planned architecture, way ahead of its time, these central sacred hearths, distinct burials, this amazing unique art. Finding Lepenski Vir wasn't just finding old stuff. It completely shook up what historians thought about prehistoric Europe.
Oh, totally. Especially the Mesolithic. That period around 10,000 years ago, it just upended the standard view.
What was the standard view?
Before Lepenski Vir, the Mesolithic was often seen as, well, transitional. People were thought to be mostly simple hunter-gatherers, moving around constantly, following herds, finding seasonal food.
Nomadic, basically, living day to day.
Pretty much. The general idea was that complex societies settled villages, planned architecture, sophisticated art, that stuff really only came after farming took hold. Later, in the Neolithic period, Lepinski Vir just blew that idea apart.
How? What did it prove?
It showed that 10,000 years ago, before farming was common there, people were already capable of incredible things. Art, architecture, spiritual life, complex communities. Lepinski Vir was clearly settled, sophisticated. It lasted for centuries.
Their art wasn't just simple drawings.
No, it was stylized, abstract, really intense spiritually. Their architecture wasn't random. It was planned, specific to their culture, built to last. Their community was organized, enduring. This was home, not just a camp.
At the river, the Danube, you mentioned its importance. How did that fit into this different path to complexity?
That's absolutely key. Lepinski Vir proved that settling down didn't have to wait for farming grain. The sources really emphasized the Danube's bounty. Fish like sturgeon, carp, huge fish, available year-round.
A reliable food source.
Exactly. That stability allowed them to stay put, to develop all this complex culture, the houses, the art, the community, in a way people thought only farming could allow.
So it paints a more complex picture of that whole transition from foraging to farming, not just one straight line.
Right. Different environments, like the Danube Gorge, offered different routes, more varied, more nuanced.
Fascinating. But then, the mystery. After centuries of this obviously thriving community, the sources say they just stopped. The site was abandoned.
It's one of the biggest puzzles. A real blank page, as one source put it. You see all this vibrant life in the archaeological record, and then nothing. No single obvious reason jumps out.
And when there's no clear answer, theories pop up. What are the possibilities the sources mention? Why did they vanish?
Well, there's the idea of some natural catastrophe. A massive flood, maybe, or an earthquake. The area is seismically active.
Okay. Or maybe climate change.
That's another strong contender. If the climate shifted and affected the fish stocks, their main food source, that could force them to move.
Or maybe they just chose to leave.
Possibly. Internal reasons, maybe. Social changes. Resources other than fish running low. Or perhaps they gradually merged with a newer Neolithic farming culture spreading into the region. Assimilation.
The sources do point out there's no sign of, like, a big battle or destruction.
Right. No widespread violence or conquest found at the site. Which makes a sudden violent end seem less likely. Maybe gradual departure or blending in makes more sense. But honestly, we just don't know for sure. It's still a mystery.
Okay, let's jump back to the 1960s and 70s. The context that led to the discovery. That huge dam project, Iron Gate 3rd, was completed in 1971.
It was a genuinely massive feat of 20th century engineering. A huge dam, harnessing the Danube, creating this vast lake behind it.
A symbol of power, progress, national pride. Inaugurated by Tito and Ceausescu. Big ceremony.
A spectacle of modern achievement, controlling nature, a testament to engineering, generating power, showcasing what their states could do.
And here's the profound irony, isn't it? Almost heartbreaking. This symbol of progress was simultaneously destroying history.
Exactly. The rising water, the very source of the dam's power, was fated to completely submerge the original Lepenski Vir site forever.
After 10,000 years hidden by the river, its end wasn't natural. It was man-made progress that drowned it.
The speech is about the future echoing while this incredibly ancient past slipped beneath the waves. It's a stark image.
Really highlights that conflict, doesn't it? Development versus heritage.
But thankfully, the story doesn't just end there with the loss.
Yeah.
There was this incredible effort before the water rose.
An unprecedented preservation project. They realized how unbelievably important Trescovăț's find was.
And made the decision to try and save it, or at least significant parts of it. A colossal task, relocating parts of the settlement.
How? How do you even do that with something so old and fragile?
First, incredibly detailed documentation, recording everything, every stone, every layer, then painstakingly, almost like surgery, cutting out and lifting the house foundations, those trapezoidal shapes.
Lifting the hearths, too, and the sculptures.
Yes, the sacred hearths, and especially those iconic fish-like sculptures, carefully transported uphill to a new spot, safe from the rising reservoir.
That sounds like an unbelievable feat. Archaeology meets heavy engineering.
It absolutely was. A massive undertaking, showing how much value they ultimately placed on this cultural heritage to go to such lengths.
And they built a museum nearby.
Yes, a modern museum to house the artifacts that couldn't be left out and to allow for a reconstruction, giving visitors a sense of the site at its new, higher location.
So the relocated Lepenski Vir, protected now, it ensures the spirit, the structures, the story, they survive, even if the original ground is underwater.
Precisely. It's still this powerful window into that incredibly distant time, a cornerstone for understanding early European civilization. It really did rewrite our understanding of the Mesolithic.
Showed it was far more dynamic, complex, innovative than we thought.
And showed there wasn't just one path to complex society. The Danube's riches allowed for a different way.
It's a vital link, reminding us of human creativity, community, that deep connection to the natural world, stretching back so far.
So yeah, the story of Lepenski Vir. It's this amazing contrast to ancient creativity on the riverbank and then modern ambition and engineering on the very same banks millennia later.
A perfect example of that tricky balance. Development, heritage, past, present.
As Trescovăț's team.
Yeah.
Their frantic work wasn't just digging. It was a rescue mission, saving this priceless treasure so its whispers could still be heard today, not silenced by the water.
Which really leads to a final thought, something for you listening to mull over. Lepenski Vir completely changed our view of such an early period. What other surprises, what other complex cultures might still be out there, hidden, waiting to be found, maybe by accident, maybe on purpose?
And what does that mean for us now, when we make choices about progress versus preservation? What hidden legacies might we be choosing to keep or choosing to lose?